Hola amigos, ¿qué tal? Stuart here from Spain Speaks with an update on the current situation in Spain, day 208 of the current situation, and some news has just broken about the restrictions that were placed on cities like Madrid by the central government, but I'll tell you about those in just a minute. Firstly, a big thanks to all of the people that left comments on the last video. Lots of comments, lots of debate happening there as usual. Thanks to people that supported the channel through a small donation. You can see your name here. Thanks to people that bought merchandise, and a big thanks to my patrons on Patreon for your ongoing support. Now, as I said, all the news today is back on Madrid and other cities that have gone into a forced confinement in recent times. Remember that the health ministry has imposed new rules, new regulations on certain cities with more than 100,000 people. And of course, the capital city of Spain, Madrid, being one of the biggest cities affected by those new rules. However, as we can see here, the justice system has knocked down restrictions in Madrid because they limit fundamental rights. The TSJM concludes that the health legislation is not enough to limit the right to free movement and assembly and dismisses the decision as interference by public powers. The Superior Court of Justice of Madrid, the TSJM, does not endorse the new restrictions imposed in Madrid since last Saturday to try to stop the advance of the pandemic, understanding that they limit fundamental rights and freedoms without sufficient legal authorization. This decision has been agreed on by the 8th section of the contentious administrative chamber of the aforementioned court in a resolution in which it refuses to ratify the measures reluctantly agreed by the Community of Madrid, which appealed the measures judicially. In the 3rd section of the Order of the Ministry of Health, which establishes limitations in certain municipalities of the region, in execution of the order of the Minister of Health, Salvador Illa. So there we go, the central government's decision to close Madrid and other places that didn't meet their health criteria, apparently not legal because it limits fundamental rights of movement. So what does this all mean for Madrid? Well, basically, I think it means that Madrid will go back to the situation that they had before, where certain health areas had restrictions, but not the whole city. So for example, if you were living in one of those areas like Puente de Vallecas or Ceuta, which had limitations before, you'll go back to those limitations in those areas, but people in the rest of the city will get back their freedom of movement to move around the city, to move around the country without any problems at all. And that is good news for people in Madrid because, of course, next Monday is a public holiday, and lots of people no doubt will be able to go through with their plans to travel to other parts of Spain. So a huge blow for the central government and their attempt to close down the capital city. Now, yesterday, the Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez announced his master plan to reactivate the Spanish economy. We can see here that he plans to create 800,000 jobs in order to boost the recovery from COVID-19. Spanish Prime Minister Mr. Sánchez has unveiled plans to create 800,000 jobs to revive an economy devastated by the COVID-19 pandemic. Spain will be the second largest recipient of money from the EU's Coronavirus Recovery Fund, with 140 billion euros earmarked for Madrid. Sánchez said that the plan is the roadmap for the modernization of our country for the next 6 years to transform the hard blow of the pandemic into a huge opportunity. The socialist leader made the announcement from the Moncloa Palace in Madrid, surrounded by television screens of ministers, ambassadors, and trade union representatives. More than 37% of the investments will be devoted to the ecological transition and almost 33% to the digital transition, in line with the European Commission's objectives, Sánchez confirmed. And as we can see here in another headline, digitalization and ecological transition projects will account for 70% of EU funds. The main mission of the Recovery, Transformation and Resilience Plan will be to create more than 800,000 jobs in 3 years. 72 billion euros will be distributed. So Spain planning to spend the bulk of the money on digital and ecological transition projects. And of course, as we saw there, the Prime Minister plans to create 800,000 jobs. And as I mentioned yesterday, the plan is to keep unemployment below 20% if possible. Now, an article from the Wall Street Journal that caught my attention is Spain becomes Europe's weak link. The Spanish economy is suffering from a particularly bad resurgence in COVID-19 cases, as well as an outsized exposure to tourism. The structure of Spain's economy, which enjoyed a growth spurt between 2015 and 2019, explains why it is at risk now. Tourism directly accounts for 12% of Spanish gross domestic product, more than any other member of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, and employs 14% of the population. So according to that paper, Spain is Europe's weak link, but Pedro Sánchez, as we saw, has the chance to transform the economy and take that dependence off tourism and make it a more modern, more prosperous economy, and hopefully turn it into an economy that will be able to withstand the challenges of the next decade or so. Time will tell. Now, Spain's health minister, Mr. Illa, came out yesterday and said that the great lesson of this health crisis is that the entire national health system must be strengthened. In a debate organised by El País newspaper, the Minister of Health admits that the epidemiological situation in Spain is very worrying. So good to see some reassuring words there from the health minister that the situation is very worrying, but I do agree with him that the health system needs to be strengthened, but obviously it should have been done before the pandemic, so the minister's words coming a little bit too late there. Now let's have a look at the health situation in Spain with the map and graph from El Confidencial newspaper. We can see here in the graph on the right the evolution of diagnosed cases and deaths on a 7-day average. We can see the graph there going down slightly. And the data for the last 7 days, we have cases at 52,727, which is down by 4.95%. Hospitalizations are up 1.01% at 5,825, and deaths are down 8.6% at 445 on previous data in the last 7 days. Now, if we have a look at the map of Spain and the evolution of accumulated cases in a 14-day period per 100,000 inhabitants, we can see that Madrid's still going strong at 591.16 cases. However, those numbers are down in Madrid. The Valencian community has topped the 100 mark again and sits at 100.42 cases. The Canary Islands now the best autonomous community in Spain for the health figures at 97.24 cases, and Catalonia sitting steady at 190.51 accumulated cases in a 14-day period per 100,000 inhabitants. Now, we just saw there that Valencia has again topped the 100 mark. It went down below 100 earlier in the week, but a university party in Valencia has caused the largest coronavirus outbreak with 120 infected people. The coronavirus outbreak originated at an illegal party at the Galileo Galilei residence hall in Valencia, which has forced the suspension of face-to-face classes at the Polytechnic University. It is already the largest outbreak detected since the start of the pandemic in the Valencian community. And according to one newspaper, the recklessness of the students has left 25,000 other students without face-to-face classes in Valencia. So 25,000 students in Valencia having their studies interrupted because some people just can't get it into their head that it's probably better not to party at the moment. Now, Spain's beleaguered Vice President, Pablo Iglesias, has come out and said what he thinks would be some improvements for the country of Spain. He says that Spain is not just Madrid. He advocates that the government structure should better represent the country. So there we go, Mr. Iglesias saying that the country is too Madrid focused and that it needs to be changed in order to represent the diversity of the country. And to be honest, I agree with him. Now on that note, let's have a look at some of the comments from the last videos. The first one here from Speak English Not Spanglish. I'm a freelance teacher and paid €281.31 per month and no discount during the pandemic and zero benefits either. My asesoría couldn't care less about helping you claim certain benefits, say they don't exist or don't know about them. I've been hearing about this pay-as-you-earn scheme instead of the set monthly fee for a few years, so I'll believe it when I see it. Yeah, thanks for the comment, Speak English. I think you are referring there to that new scheme that the government is talking about, where self-employed people will pay Social Security contributions according to what they earn instead of a fixed amount every month. And you're a bit skeptical, I see, about whether that will take place or not. I too am a bit skeptical because I have heard about these changes for years and years and years, and they never seem to happen. So I can understand why you are a little bit skeptical about this. And you said there that your gestor didn't get you any benefits during the pandemic. Well, my suggestion would be to look for a different one, somebody who gives you a little bit of advice, or whether there are some type of benefits, because as we know, lots and lots of self-employed people have been affected in the last 6 months here in Spain. So start looking for a new gestor. One here from Evil Grandma. Hi Stuart, could you please clarify for me that the flu vaccine is not available in the local Pharmacies? We have been getting ours there for the past 17 years and are now told that the authorities are not allowing this. We need to go to the local NHS clinic, but we are not registered. We only have private health insurance. Evil Grandma, thanks for the comment. I think that is true. Pharmacies are not allowed to distribute this year the flu vaccine. I saw this article here before, that pharmacies will not sell the flu vaccine this year because the health department has collected all of the available vaccines. So a bit of a change there from recent years where you could go to your local chemist or local pharmacy, pick up the flu vaccine and of course get somebody to put it in your arm. This year it's going to be a bit more difficult because they're only going to make it available through the health systems, but I suppose that the private health clinics are also going to have access to the vaccine. So I would go to your local doctor and check, and just to make sure that they're going to have those things available, because of course you want to get the flu vaccine. You've heard the benefits of having it this year, so therefore go and ask your doctor, see what he says, and see if they can get hold of the vaccine for you. One here from Tom. The two things I've taken from the COVID situation is the uselessness of politicians and the lack of social discipline of the general public. Where you have somewhere decent politicians and a people with a sense of responsibility, you can control the virus to some extent, as we've seen in New Zealand and Australia. Yeah, Tom, thanks for the comment. You're right. The uselessness of politicians has been highlighted, and the lack of social responsibility that a lot of people have has also come to the fore. Those examples that you give, New Zealand and Australia, I don't know if we can classify them as normal situations, because they both have the characteristic of being islands and they were able to close their borders fairly easily. And in the case of Australia, they even closed the internal borders as well, creating bubble situations in various states. The fact of the matter is that one day they're going to have to open again, whether the virus is around or not, whether they're waiting for the vaccine to arrive, and therefore everything's going to be hunky-dory down there. But if that doesn't arrive, which is a possibility, they're going to have to try to open up and live with COVID-19 like the rest of the world. And here in Europe particularly, where you don't have any borders in place, it has been a bit of a mess. And of course, that's been one of the big challenges for politicians and the population to deal with. One here from Will. If people eat dinner at 10 or 11 at night, what time do they go to bed? And what time do they get up in the morning, especially on a work day? When I was working and still in retirement, I'm in bed by 10 and up the next morning at 6. Yeah, Will, thanks for the comment. The fact of the matter is that 10 and 11 are common dining times in the summer months and at weekends. And normally when people are also on holidays. The majority of people, I think, I don't want to generalize, but the majority tend to have dinner a bit earlier, probably around 9, maybe not as late as 10, but at the weekends if you go out, that's the common time to meet with friends, around 10 or 11, so it is a little bit late. However, here in Spain, everything happens later than in other parts of the world. For example, the nightly news, which in Australia happens at 6 p.m, here happens at 9 p.m, when people are normally sitting down, that family time, starting to have dinner. The nightly movie or the primetime television programs don't start until around 10, 10:15, 10:30, and sometimes they finish at 12:30. One thing that I can never understand is that MasterChef Junior, which is a kids program, starts at about 10:15 and doesn't finish until after midnight. So I don't know how many kids stay up to watch it until the end, but if they do, they're going to be pretty tired little kids the next day, and sometimes it can be a bit of a challenge to wake up kids in the morning. One here from Finding Solutions. Do you know that nobody in Spain uses the term Spaniard? We use the term Spanish even if you think it's not correct. Spaniard sounds like bastard, and we don't know who has invented it or why. Yeah, thanks for the comment there. The word Spaniard does exist. It is the word that you use in English to refer to people from Spain. In fact, it is exactly the same as calling somebody from England un inglés, un francés, un italiano, un alemán, un portugués. It's exactly the same. It's the word that we use to call people from this country. It's not a derogatory word, and it doesn't, in my opinion, sound like bastard. I don't think it sounds the same. So don't get upset. It's only a word, and don't feel insulted if somebody calls you a Spaniard. One here from GL. They need to set business laws to encourage new business and growth. Also, I'd like to see the EU double down on the job market changes they wanted to see as part of the relief funds. Yeah, GL, thanks for the comment. I agree wholeheartedly with your comment there. Spain needs to become a more business-friendly country. They need to encourage entrepreneurs to start businesses, to get businesses up and running and create jobs for the population. I would love to see that happen. However, I'm not optimistic. I think that a lot of the money will go to the big companies, as it always does, the big companies that support the government, the big companies that open their doors for politicians to go into when they retire from politics. I think those will be the companies that get the majority of these EU funds. And I don't think that Spain is going to become an entrepreneurial hotspot, unfortunately. But hey, that's just my opinion. And finally, one here from Blood Carver. I have zero confidence that Spain can modernize their setup to a modern arrangement and also make it digital with those timeframes. By the way, something they should have done years ago without pressure from the EU. Yeah, Blood Carver, thanks for the comment. And you're right, it's something that should have been done years ago without the EU pushing them to do it. It should be a natural occurrence. You should realize that there's something wrong with your economy and try to make changes in order to make it a more business-friendly place and to make it easier for people to do business and to invest their money in without having the European Union having to hold a gun to the Spanish government's head in order for them to spend that money wisely. But hey, that's what they have to do. On that note, I'll start to wrap the video up. Questions and comments, please leave them in the section below. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it, thumbs down if you didn't. Debate the situation out as you normally do. I'll see you in the next one. Hasta luego.